It's nothing really short of incredible.
Marlins fans, and welcome to this edition of FOF Live, presented by La Pop. That's LAPOP. You can visit our friends at La Pop on Instagram, Twitter, and at their Doral location. But before we start this stream, let me introduce our two panelists here. We have Eli Sussman. We have Alex Carver, our newest farm director, joining us to talk about probably the biggest series this season for the Marlins, as they are going up against best team in the National League, if not baseball, the Atlanta Braves. But before we get into that, let's start from the Marlins sweeping the Boston Red Sox for the first time in franchise history. And what a performance it was by the Fish, scoring 18 runs compared to the 3 runs scored by the Boston Red Sox. It was just almost the Red Sox were outclassed by the Marlins, which is something I thought I would never have said, ever as a Marlins fan. But Eli, what would the one word be about this series? You have to say one word about this series. What would it be?
Jazz. I'll say jazz, even though he wasn't the series MVP, and you can't reduce it to one word. But that was the difference, of course, from the previous success that this team has had the last month and a half, is that Jazz was back. You could say Segura as well, but then Carver would leave the show, and we kind of need him to fill out the panel. Because Segura, this was his first series back from the IL as well. But Jazz looked great. I felt in some circles the impact of his return was being kind of overlooked just because the team was so successful without him. He kind of showed instantly exactly the difference that he makes, the base running impact that he had in the first game, and then showing the power with homering in each of the next 2 games, including the series finale. That was an important insurance run in the 9th inning, and an impressive one as well against Kenley Jansen, dead center field. So he looked great. He looked fantastic. He's back in the middle of the order. I'm sure that will continue to be a hot topic, exactly where he hits in the order. It's not much of an issue, though, as long as he's in there somewhere. And as long as he's facing right-handed pitching, which was the case for most of this series. He did hit one against the lefty. I think the one he hit in the middle game of the series was against the lefty. Even if it was an inexperienced lefty, an underwhelming lefty, that is kind of the one bugaboo about his game still, is whether he can hit lefties, whether you want him in the lineup truly every single day. This was just outstanding. And I think only of all our series predictions, I could probably go back and find it, there was very few people that expressed the confidence to put a sweep. There were some that had the Marlins winning, but to actually sweep the series, as you said, they've never done it before in Fenway Park. This was a statement series for sure.
Yeah, and really great performances all around. We could start game by game and start with the first one. Jazz's return from the IL, from turf toe. Sandy getting right back into things in his Cy Young form last season with 7 innings, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts. Jazz was definitely that MVP, you could say, of that game, to go along with a perfect Joey Wendell. Carver, talk to me about that first game and how great Sandy was, and seeing Jazz back for the first time in, I believe, 2 months.
Yeah, man, it's just really encouraging to see Sandy get back into form after how he has struggled. And this Red Sox team isn't great, but it's also not terrible. It's a team that's like right around 500, I think. But yeah, it's great to see Sandy get back into form in a hitter's environment like Fenway Park, and just get back on the horse, man. That is a guy. The Marlins have done what they've done without Sandy at his best. So if Sandy is back at his best, and can get back to his best, maybe through the encouragement that he got from this start, that's really huge, especially as you go into the second half of the season. So I'm really, really, really encouraged to see that Sandy had the start that he did. He was theoretically dominant in the start. You see the numbers on the screen. Very, very good. His command was back. He was using all of his pitches. It looked really good, man. And like I said, all at Fenway Park, which is not an easy place to do it. So this was very encouraging for me. I liked Sandy in the start a lot. And the offense showed up for him. So that was great, including Jazz, as you mentioned. You just see what Jazz can do, man. Just change a game pretty much immediately. So we all know that the talent is there. We all know what he can do. He's just got to stay healthy.
Yeah, and really great. You mentioned all around. Also to see from Joey Wendell, who I believe is batting close to 350, I believe, maybe even close to 400 the last couple of games or whatnot. Eli, what have you seen from Joey Wendell and him staying put at that shortstop for the Marlins and just his offensive ability just coming up as of late?
Well, with this particular 4-hit game, I should direct people to the other video on our YouTube channel, our down the dorsal breakdown of that game, because John Turlington looked at all 4 of the hits and he was like cracking up because this was not a dominant 4-hit game. This was at least 2 of them you could argue were defensive miscues. And then even the final one was just well struck at the right spot. He's not a guy that's you're going to put your team on your back. He needs to, as a lot of the hitters in this lineup, he needs to find the lanes between defenders, and his batted ball quality is never going to overwhelm you with him. That being said, this was a guy that was had a very loose grip on the shortstop job when he originally came back from that injury early in the year. For a while, he just was not hitting the way that he needed to hit to even be a solid everyday player, to be somebody that naturally there continue to be speculation about whether the Marlins will go outside the organization and get another shortstop. But recently, as you mentioned, he's now doing everything to solidify that at that position, including defensively in this series. There were a lot of balls hit to Wendell during this series, and he made some not so easy plays look pretty routine with the accuracy of his arm to make up for the lack of throwing strength. Yeah, overall, you'd have to say that he's having a better year than he had even last year. And he is really fully righted the ship. So even though he's not the strength of the team, this was looking like a big weakness, and for both offensively and defensively coming into the year. And now when you look back at comparing it to a year ago, all of a sudden the shortstop production overall, you'd have to say it's been an improvement compared to what they had with Miggy Rowe and an assorted variety of players last year. Yeah, he's been good. He's an important piece of it. With this team, they're firing on all cylinders. It seems like almost every single position, maybe with a few exceptions, but almost every position they're getting decent production from. And that's how you put together a good team. That's how you win 3 straight games and do it by multiple runs, is because sometimes they pile on and everybody clicks on the same night. And other times you just need one person to step up and kind of fill the void on a particular night. This just looks like a good team, and he's yet another piece of that.
Yeah, just really great. Almost just every aspect of the game by the Marlins. We can go in for that and talk about the next game, where the Marlins did beat their Boston Red Sox by score of 6-2. Looking at some of the thing here, Garrett Cooper really went off. Not to say went off, but he had the home run, he had the walks, and this was maybe Braxton Garrett's game. Coming off a career performance with 13 strikeouts. To go here, he went 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 2 Ks, 1 walk. So a little bit of a back down to earth type game for Brax compared to the other one. But overall, again, just really great performances all around. Again, with Joey Wendell, Gene Segura even got a hit. So I think Carver will have to close his ears for that one. But Carver, talk to me a little bit about Braxton Garrett and what we've seen from him just this whole season. You're playing the Braves this series, and take out that game for Braxton, he has all-star numbers. But talk to me a little bit about what you saw this game and just overall.
Yeah, man. He just keeps going. And like you said, he's playing the best baseball of his career. And it's through like I said last time I talked to you guys, it's through the full realization of the slider. That pitch has always been good for him. He's more so built up the curveball, but now the slider has become his best pitch, and guys can't hit it. And that pitch has been so good for him. He also mixes in 3 other pitches as well, and his command is fantastic. And that's not something that we could say in years past for this guy. He really struggled in years past with fastball command, getting ahead early in counts. That's what got him in trouble. He's getting ahead early in counts. He's using that slider. He's still using his changeup, still using the curveball. And like I said, the fastball command is also allowing him to get back into counts when he needs to. So it's awesome, man. This is everything that this guy needed to do to be successful. The talent was there. He just needed to put it all together, and he's done it, which is fantastic. So I had my doubts about Braxton ever getting to this level. He's done it, and that is huge for a team that really needs him right now. So it is very encouraging to see Braxton playing the best baseball of his career, and he just keeps going. So it's great. There's not much else I can say other than I'm very proud of him.
Yeah, just, everything has just been going just so well for him. I believe you take out again the Atlanta one, his ERA is about 2.5, maybe under 2.5 after.
I think even lower at this point.
Oof.
Now that he's been performing that way. And I touched on this in the previous show. Like, it's a bummer that he doesn't line up to face the Braves and get revenge here. Because that would have potentially given him a sliver of hope to sneak into the All-Star conversation. He's been that good in a year where starting pitching across the National League is sort of underwhelming. A 3.5 ERA while making all of your scheduled starts, as you see here. That Braves outing was one of the very few that was not 5+ innings, and that other previous one against the Braves, that was rain shortened as well. So he's been even better than numbers would indicate, because he's now had 2 starts cut short by rain. I hadn't thought about that, but going back to that April game, and then of course this one, Skip said he would have gone out for an additional inning at least had the weather not gotten into the way. He's been so super valuable to this team. He's fully realizing kind of what you want from a first round draft pick. That realistically, you can't even expect first rounders to all be stars, but if they can be steady above average starters, that's a huge win. This is a guy that now still has a bunch of years of club control ahead of him as well. So the Marlins absolutely thrilled with him. This is pretty much exactly what you hope for. It's been such a huge piece of why they're in this position that they are in, because he has been, by any measure, him and Luzardo for the course of the entire season, those have been the 2 most important starters. Now we have Airy closing in on them, and we'll see where Sandy ends up at the end of the year. For the time being, this has been Braxton's awesome.
Would you say that Braxton is currently, I obviously number 1 will be Uri, maybe the second best starter in the rotation? Would you maybe this season, would you consider Brax to be the second, if not maybe the first, if Uri does get shut down?
Yeah, the question, he's just, as good as he's been, you don't know entirely what to expect from the second half, because he's going to be pitching innings eventually that he's never pitched before in a single season. Physically, you don't know exactly what that's going to do to him. I touched on this before. As somebody that has below average fastball velo, if fatigue eventually lowers that even a little bit more, the margin for error that he has with that pitch, it goes away. And all of a sudden you could see a lot more hard contact. I don't know. It's all speculation. You have to give him a chance to go to actually test his limits. And the Marlins frankly don't have a choice at the moment. He should be in the rotation until indefinitely. And for better or worse, he's going to be an X factor for this team in terms of whether or not they hold on to this playoff spot.
Yeah, it's just really, everything great there. Eli, will we happen to see his ERA post that Atlanta start from maybe May 8th, if not May 14th on, how his ERA would be? Obviously, the Atlanta game, and even did pretty good in that Arizona game, but Arizona has just been easily probably second, maybe tied with Atlanta as the best team in the NL.
Yeah. Entering the Braves start, he started the year, you could see it there with a 2.45 ERA. And ever since the Braves started, he's at a 2.44 ERA. Oh. So that math is very easy, right? You just add up all those starts aside from that clunker, and it's 2.4 or something. That is what he's been outside of that outing for this team this year. Just absolutely above anybody's reasonable expectations for him this season.
Yeah, I said earlier this year too, like right around like not too long after that bad start that he had, the one bad start that he had. And even earlier in the year when you see 3 innings, 4.2, 3 innings again, like it was still the theme early this year that you didn't really know what you're going to get with Braxton, and he's kind of answered those questions lately. You can count on this guy now for at least like 5 innings, 1 earned run, 5 innings, 2 earned runs, whatever it may be. That's really, really a huge step forward for Braxton. So again, really proud of this guy. It's really cool, man, and they definitely need him. So,
and to go on to finish off this series against the Red Sox, we have to talk about the game that happened last night. Just one of the best pitching performances we've seen, maybe this season on both ends. Both teams, I should say, because we almost even saw a no-hitter. I believe we went to the 7th inning with Brian Bello going a no-hitter. So it was, Yankees get a perfect game. The Red Sox always have to answer back, and maybe they were going to do it with a no-hitter, but it was not the case for the Marlins. Eli, you love Brian Bello. You have him on your fantasy team. Talk to me a little bit on what you saw from him and what he was doing so good that just Marlins couldn't figure it out.
Well, he got I would say it felt to me more like what the Marlins weren't doing. They were not getting the ball in the air, and even the hit that broke it up by Segura, that was an infield single as well that got them, that finally, broke the seal on that game. He was really good. It was not like typical no-hitter good. I thought this just more reflected, keep in mind that the Marlins at short notice, they were missing both Cooper and Gurriel. Cooper because of an illness, and Gurriel because during BP, he got hit in the face with a ball and he hurt his nose. So without those guys, I think that was a factor to it as well, where you didn't have quite as much talent in the lineup. That forced them to put, who was it that they put in instead? Well, they had to move Arise to first base, and I think they had to put Segura in there because Segura was not in the original lineup, if you remember. So that was a big part of it, I thought. More so, Bayo had his good velocity, but there were a lot of balls in play that were kind of hit towards convenient places. It was good. I wouldn't say it was necessarily the best pitching performance against the Marlins this year. It was the best results. But I thought it was more of just everything kind of lining up for him. And he put up still a good fantasy score. So I appreciate that. I'm still I still got a chance in my matchup this week because of him, even though he ends up getting the hard luck loss, finally falling apart a little bit in that 8th inning.
Yeah, falling apart, you mentioned a little bit when Gene Segura with a single there, and to go at the opposite end and talk about Jesus Luzardo, who himself just a really great performance. You could call it a one hitter, or how much it was for Luzardo, 3-hitter, whatnot, but 6 1/3, 3 hits, 0 earned runs, 9 Ks to one walk. This is a completely different Luzardo than we've seen maybe the prior couple starts where he was a little shaky, but it seems like he's gone back to where we thought he would be over the last maybe 2 starts for Luzardo. So how would you guys see Luzardo this series or this game against the Red Sox?
Yeah, this was impressive. I thought his command was pretty outstanding in this game. There was a sequence where he retired 16 in a row after that, at the end of that first inning and going all the way through the 6th. He really locked it in there. His fastball velo was pretty much normal. And he threw some of the best changeups that I've seen from him this year, because let's see, he was going up against the lineup. Aside from Verdugo at the top and Devers in the middle, yeah, actually, it was a decent balance of lefties and righties they went up against. This was the one game that Yoshida started in the series because he hadn't started the previous 2, dealing with a minor injury situation. So all things considered, this was on the short list of very best outings he's had as a Marlin, if not perhaps right up there with the best that he's had this year. This is what it's supposed to look like, where you have all 3 of those pitches, the 4-seamer, the slider, and the changeup, and he got most of his whiffs on the slider. I just thought he did a good job even setting that up with his other pitches. He just made it look so easy out there. That's the easiest way to explain it. He made it look easy against a pretty deep lineup for the Red Sox.
Yeah, overall, everyone was there.
Go
ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, he's been solid. This was a really good start, as Eli said, for Luzardo, just putting it all together with all of his pitches, like Braxton, like I said before. So yeah, man, this rotation is doing really well right now. You even have Hoeing at the back end who's contributing. Sandy came back. Like it's really encouraging right now for the Marlins. They got a little lucky in this game. The Segura was at that infield thing where it was ridiculous. BABIP on that is probably through the roof, but whatever. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool to see them get rewarded and reward their pitching. In a game like this where the offense struggled against a very good pitcher, they made it happen. So they're finding ways to win, right? And they're rewarding their pitching with these kind of games. So that's what I took away from this game is that, they're not wasting these great starts anymore. They're finding ways to get it done when they get a great start from their starters, which is now a good portion of the time, which is very, very good. The only other thing I will call out is the guy that I always like to call out, as you guys know, that's Andrew Nardi, who has been spectacular out of this team's bullpen. Last 23 innings pitched, he has a 0.81 ERA and a 33.5 KBB. So they're backing up the starters as well with guys like this, with guys like AJ Puck. They're doing really, really super in backing up their starting pitching, which is not something we could say a lot of the time. So it's cool to see.
Yeah, we're looking at this graphic here from MLB Network. It's just how great the Marlins have been over the past 7 games, a week's worth of games, 3-0 record, 0.62 ERA, only 1 home run allowed. This is just really incredible to see. And it gets teams, maybe not the top of their divisions or maybe top of the league, but 2 teams are still fighting to be somewhat, relevant, I should say. They're not teams that are 20, 30 games under 500. But just really great. Eli, what does this tell you about the pitching, despite, the way that Sandy's gone this season, that, no matter what, the Marlins are still figuring out ways to just pitch against their opponent.
Yeah, and the run prevention is obviously amazing. But the length that they're giving the team is also valuable too. If not for the rain, then even Braxton goes a little bit deeper. The fact that Luzardo went into the 7th inning, that Sandy completed 7 innings, that to me is almost as important as run prevention. Because even when this rotation was struggling, it's been the bullpen all year long that's been kind of helping them out and keeping things in good shape and making sure that whenever they had the lead, that lead held up. For that bullpen to be as good in the second half of the season as they were in the first half, you need to keep them.
Interrupt, Eli, really quick. I don't know if you would say, but somewhat breaking news: Aroldis Chapman just got traded.
Are you sure? Okay, I see that in our group text. I see Lewis putting it
to the Rangers.
I know he's easily fooled. Is that verified, or is Lewis
and Rosenthal just retweeted it? Rosenthal just tweeted it. It has the gold check mark right next to it. Wow.
Okay, so we should probably react to that one. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Coming this early, not a surprise. It is official. Here's from the Royals. Yeah. Wow. So let's see. I'll throw this up for people. Getting 2 prospects in return from the Rangers.
I'm surprised that Barlow wasn't attached to it. That's just Chapman.
Yeah. So this is not a surprising trade candidate, but the timing is being more than a full month ahead of the deadline. You don't see this very often. For the circumstances have to align pretty quickly. The Rangers have had a pretty bad bullpen this year, and the Royals have been a pretty bad team throughout the entire season. So you knew they were going to be sellers. This is a familiar name. He was, depending on whose sources you check, he was somebody the Marlins were considering signing in the offseason. And so it could have been a Marlin. I was really down on him, and he has proven me wrong. He's been really excellent this year. One of the league leaders. His velo is back up to the triple digits. He is just striking out pretty much everybody. So this makes a lot of sense. And the Marlins, they would kind of like to have this guy, but as we touched on, their bullpen has been even in his absence, it's been a strength of the team. So I'm not surprised to see him go to a different contender.
Yeah, just really great overall. And the Royals are obviously not going to be bothers. They're probably the worst team in the league, in Major League Baseball, in the way they performed as of late this entire season. Alex, as our minor league representative, farm director, do those names maybe stand out to you that the Royals are getting?
Yeah, so you see that Reagans is a 40-man roster guy, so he'll likely join the 40-man roster for KC here. So that's pretty much what that means. That's why they point that out. So I guess not far away. It looks like he's in AAA. And And then Cabrera, I can't give you anything on him. I don't know anything about that Dominican prospect or Dominican Summer League prospect, but it makes sense. Like you said, it's an expiry contract for a 35-year-old pitcher. The Royals are pretty far away, as you just alluded to. So I think this was expected that they were going to deal this player. So it didn't happen at the start of the season like somebody predicted, but it did happen before the midway point of the season. But I think this was easy to see coming. They get 2 prospects for an expiry contract. Can't be mad at it if you're Kansas City. And then Texas, who's been very impressive this year, just gets another piece for the back end of their bullpen. So it works for both teams. So.
What I saw somebody put into context recently is that the Rangers, for a lot of the season, they were one of maybe the surprise team, the one team that was trying to be competitive, but seemed even better than people thought early on. There was so much excitement around them. But if you look up, the Marlins are right there with them in terms of their overall team record at this point. So the Rangers, they were not teetering, but they had really cooled off recently to come back down to earth a little bit. They're still leading their division. They need to do something to solidify that, to make a splash. And they did it.
Yeah. So be on the lookout there. Scott Barlow still looks like he'd probably get traded. But yeah, what you mentioned, Eli, the timing was just a little off. We still have a month, I believe, to the deadline. And then you're still not even in the All-Star break. So it looks like it was more that the Rangers really wanted to get Chapman than the Royals just, waiting to get rid of him. They could have probably waited to the deadline to try to get that offer there. But it looks like the Rangers really wanted him. And the Rangers right now look like probably one of the best teams in the AL. And you mentioned a surprise team and, what spending money can get you. But
yeah, I do want to touch on the other implication of this is, as we think about what the Marlins could do with the deadline, the important caveat is that there needs to be 2 to tango. There needs to be sellers willing to give them pieces to contribute. There have been so few teams around the league that are bona fide sellers. The Royals have been an obvious one. They've been one of the few that we've known about. And it doesn't take much to assume that the Oakland A's are open for business and that the Nationals are going to be open for business. And I think you can now put the Rockies in that conversation very clearly. But aside from that, who else is definitely going to be willing to give up major league experienced and productive major leaguers for prospects at this deadline? Because these teams are all still everybody else is kind of at least in the periphery of their races, whether it's the division or the wild card race. You need to, hope that there is some clarity in those races provided over the next few weeks to give the Marlins more potential trade partners to choose from. Otherwise, that leads to what you call a seller's market, where the few teams that are selling can get really great value in return, and that teams that are buying kind of have to settle for solutions that might not be perfect for them. This is a team, as we keep touching on, this is not a surprising move to be made at some point. There still is big question as to what other teams are going to be in a selling situation by the time that the deadline comes around.
Yeah, it's something to really point out is with so many teams that are still in contention, how many teams are going to be clear-cut sellers and how many teams are going to be clear-cut buyers. So that's definitely something to look at as we go into perusing for potential trades, is who is really selling, and making those definitions with the way that the standings look right now is going to be difficult. So, man, it's going to be an interesting deadline for sure.
Yeah. We can mention some here. I'm looking a lot in the chat, and the name that's really popping out to me is Jaime Candelario. Everyone looks like that they want him, potentially maybe even Lane Thomas, but that might be a little harder to get. With Candelario, now a little bit before the break, be someone of an option that you guys would potentially like for the Marlins, or do you see that as a position that the Marlins don't really need at the moment? You're muted. I thought my volume went out.
Here we go. Yes, I do think he is a trade target for the Marlins, pending Gene Segura's production. So he's been almost always a third baseman, a little bit of first base as well. having a really big bounce back year for the Nationals after struggling badly with the Tigers last year, should be pointed out. There's some inconsistency. Overall career numbers, he's like a league average hitter, gives you a little bit of power, gives you a little bit of on-base skills. He's almost the epitome of an average player historically. This year, he's been, you could argue it's his best year if he maintains his pace, because he's also playing really good defense at third. Despite being not the most athletic looking guy, he is a clear positive by both outs above average and defensive runs saved. And he is just like Chapman. He's a pending free agent on a team that's going nowhere, which means that unless the Nationals are going to think about giving him a qualifying offer at the end of the year, which seems pretty unlikely, even though he has improved, they're probably going to cash out in the middle of the year and go to the highest bidder for him. So he's right in the middle of his prime. He is among the league leaders in doubles this year. He's a really above average hitter. And if you trust the defense, then he'd be an upgrade for the Marlins at third base. That being said, I don't know necessarily if they would pay the price to go outside the organization to get him, unless Segura continues to be the Segura we've seen the first 3 months of the season. There's a lot of pressure on him to perform in the small sample in the month of July to look like his old self in order to maintain a pretty big role on this team. Otherwise, I wouldn't be. If he continues to struggle at the same level that he has so far, then I could see a scenario where his role becomes very tiny on this team, where Candelario becomes the primary third baseman. And they make that push in the middle of the year. As I touched on in this article, this is on fishonfirst.com, as you can see. I think these intra-division trades are going to be a lot more common than they used to be. Even though the Nationals are a division rival, these teams play less head-to-head than they have in previous years. This guy's a pending free agent, so he's not going to haunt the Nationals in future years unless the Marlins were to re-sign him free agency. And at the same time, even if being in the division, it's not quite what it used to mean, just because there are more wild cards. So there are ample chances to make it into the postseason, even if you're not the best team in your own division. And there's chances to make it far in the playoffs, even if there's a better team in your own division. So the Marlins are in that situation right now with the Braves, where even if they're not going to win the division, there's still so much to play for this year, because they know they're in a good shot to make the playoffs as a wild card. So to sum it up, I do think this is a name to keep your eye on, and a lot of it is tied to how Segura performs over the next month.
I think it's a possibility, definitely. And I don't have to go into the Segura stuff. I mean, I'm not going to do it. But what I would say for this player in particular is that he has clunker seasons. I mean, his season last year was terrible. It just wasn't good. And then there's also the health. He's been a very injury-prone player as well in years past. So there's concern for me about his longevity and about his level of consistency. But I don't think you can argue that he'd be an improvement over Gene Segura. So, and he can play first base too if he has to. So, he has some positional flexibility as well. It's not like he's a one-position guy. So it's possible. He's in the middle of a decent season, as Eli said. He also goes through spouts where he just doesn't walk at all. I mean, last year, 28 walks. That's a problem. To this season, he already has 27, so that's good. So he's in the midst of another good season, but seems like he has seasons where it's just not very good. But in the midst of a good season on an expiry contract, maybe they bring him back at the end of the year. Maybe they don't. If they get him, it'll be up to them. But yeah, I think it's a possibility. There's just some questions that I have.
Yeah. Really quickly before we get to the break, I saw this question, or I want to see if you guys would answer it. Who do you think of the Marlins' number one trade asset? Obviously, they're not going to be sellers. Excuse me. But in terms of teams that are looking for players on the Marlins, in the organization and the minors, who do you think is the number one guy that teams would target in terms of they want to get a trade, or someone back when say they want Javier Candelario? Who's the one player like the Nats would need from the Marlins or any other team?
It's a really good question, because at the moment, I think you could argue in terms of the top prospect in the organization at this moment, maybe it's Khalil Watson, maybe it's one of these injured pitchers. There's not a clear-cut guy in that conversation. Regarding Max Meyer, well, he is now progressing pretty far in his rehab from Tommy John. It's almost a full year out from his injury. And for him, somebody that's already performed at the upper levels of the minors and has so many years of club control in front of him, somebody that for the Marlins would be expendable depending on how much they're focused on winning this year. I think like he's somebody that reportedly they have had serious conversation about trading in the past. So I feel like that's somebody that would be available and would have. There's certain teams that I think would still be pretty confident in Max being a long-term starter potentially. There's questions about that. I imagine there's at least one team out there that would be a big believer in him if he's back to the guy that he used to be. The question is that he's not going to pitch in any minor league games, I don't think, until after the deadline. So you're really not knowing exactly what you're getting. That being said, like they're not in a position to really trade any current major leaguers on their team. We've talked about this, that they're in a good situation right now with the rotation, but you really can't risk moving one of their other current starters. Otherwise, all of a sudden, they're just another injury away from that becoming a vulnerability again. So I think you just have to look at the prospect side. I would side with Max Meyer on that.
Yeah, there's a couple guys that they could deal from that other teams would be interested in. Meyer is up there. He has major league experience already. Like Eli said, though, you just got to wait for him to come back, number one. So it would be a team that would be willing to wait. Obviously wouldn't be a contender. It would be a seller, really. And we just talked about how it may be hard to define who is a true seller outside of a couple teams. So him, yes. And then other prospects that you can deal from, because I agree it would have to come from the prospect side and not the major league side, because I don't think they can afford to move anybody right now. Honestly, I really don't. At least not anybody that anybody would want. So other guys to point to, I would say Khalil, would be up there as a main piece. Some guys also in the top 10, I would say, in prospect rankings, maybe Victor Mesa Jr. For his athleticism would be a guy that somebody could take a chance on. Definitely to continue to build him up. Yiddy Capay, he has struggled this year, but not impossible that somebody would take a chance on him. And then I'll also call out Evan Fitterer, who walks a lot of guys, but shows a lot, and he's pitching at AA at age 23. So that's encouraging. So that's another guy that I think would fit the bill for somebody that is looking for prospect.
All right. So with that, I think we're going to go into a quick break, and then after that, we will start our series preview for the biggest series this season versus the Braves. So stay tuned. And we are back here to preview this series versus the division-leading Atlanta Braves, and what is going to be the most watched series probably in all of baseball this weekend. So we're going to have some interesting matchups here this series. I believe the biggest one is going to be Sunday. Spencer Strider versus Sandy Alcantara Sunday, which should be the one that everyone here should be looking at if you had to circle one game. But for tonight, we are getting Alex Carver's guy, Brian Hoeing, against a returning Mike Soroka, making his first start at home in about 3 years there. Carver, talk to me a little bit about Brian Hoeing before we get into lineups and the really scary Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, this is going to be a true test. This lineup is ridiculous. They're leading baseball in many stat categories. They have a lot of scary names, a lot of scary bats. It's going to be a tough test for any pitcher. But I think Brian's up to it, man. Like we said last time that I was here, I mean, the improvement with the slider, the improvement with the spin rates, the improvement with his fastball velocity. This guy is pitching meaningful innings. And he's doing very, very well with it. Doesn't shy away from it, and I don't think he'll shy away from this Braves team at all. So I'm encouraged, man, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he deals with this test tonight. because it's definitely a heavy test, probably the biggest one of his career in terms of where the Marlins are at in the standings and the team he's going up against being a division rival. This is probably, I would say, the biggest major league start of his career. We also talked last time about going through the lineup more than twice. If he can do that against the Braves, that's massive. So we'll see. We'll see what happens tonight. But keep that in mind that if this guy makes it through the lineup more than twice, that's a huge win. So we'll see what he does. I think he's up for it, but it's going to be a fun test to follow for all three of these pitchers, including Brian tonight.
Yeah, the comment I was putting up there a moment ago is from a Braves fan. I love it when we have other teams as fans infiltrating the chat and in watching us on our series preview shows. Appreciate that. We do look at both sides of the series, so we want to cater to the people from the opposing fan base. Yeah, and I also wanted to endorse this message that not necessarily all about Sandy's start. That is a very telling one as well, but close second is Saturday, because we don't know how many more starts Airy has after Saturday before getting a rest to limit his innings. This was Craig Mish has kind of been hinting at that he thinks that's the direction they're going to go. They're going to make it an extended all-star break for him. This potentially would be the cutoff before bringing him back later in July, potentially. So I'll be fascinated to see him and see how much he keeps up what he's been doing, because on a per inning basis, he's been the best starting pitcher in baseball this season. Like, there's no even argument about it. On a per inning basis, his run prevention off the charts. And it's just like everybody else, this is going to be his biggest challenge yet, to go on the road against a mostly full-strength Braves team, and one that is playing especially well as we enter the series. Hoeing, for example, he faced the Braves right when he got called up again earlier this year. At that time, they weren't quite as clicking as they are right now. Right now, this team is just it's as good as any offense in baseball. It's as dangerous, from Acuna all the way to Michael Harris II and everybody in between. As we'll show in a moment, so much red, as they say, from StatCast perspective. This team is the best of the best. And every single game, you can't take anything for granted. And on the other side of it, you just need to hope the Marlins put up a good fight against this team. After doing so well against inferior competition for most of this first half of the season, it's been a favorable schedule. This is now a totally new test of exactly how legit they are.
Yeah.
So let's say that just an example, and hopefully this happens, but let's just say, for example, Paris comes out and puts up 6 innings with 1 earned run or less and 9 or more strikeouts, which is possible, but we'll see. So let's say that happens on Saturday. How difficult is it going to be for them to make that decision? Do you guys believe, I know Craig has hinted at it, do you guys really believe that their mind is like fully made up that that's what they're going to do when he is, like Eli just said, the literally best pitcher in baseball?
Daniel, why don't you give that first?
I feel like the Marlins have always been that way, where they have their mind into it, they're going to do it. I feel like it's something that's been premeditated before, despite if Fury, throws a no-hitter every game or whatever it would be. I believe the Marlins are set on it. And if they could potentially get another pitcher, that would probably ease their way of getting Yuri sent down. I think, personally, I wouldn't do it. I think you keep Yuri on here. He's been the best pitcher in baseball since he's debuted, and he's obviously now the best pitcher on the Marlins in 2023. With all fairness to Sandy, but in 2023, so far this season, the best pitcher, or maybe even the best player not named Luis Arias on the Marlins, has been Yuri Perez. And I think you don't send someone down just because you have an innings limit. These guys are major league players, they're professionals. You will eventually have to get used to pitching over 100 innings in a season, close to 200. Why do it later when you could do it now, when now is the perfect opportunity to do that? You're in the playoff hunt. You're 14, 15 games over 500. You can have him now. If not, you can, at least ease his innings, ease his pitching limits, but you're going to have him out there for a minimum, at least 5 innings for every start, just the way he's been. And eventually he's going to have to get off that inning restriction, and what better way to do it now when you're over 500 with a team that can help you out and make his life easier.
Yeah. A couple injury updates that are relevant regarding the rotation. Edward threw his first bullpen session since his IL stint. This is from our buddy Jordan McPherson of the Miami Herald. So he's been on the IL for 2.5 weeks. Threw a 22-pitch bullpen session today. First bullpen, really positive, but he's going to need rehab assignment in there. That's several weeks away. You're looking at best case scenario, maybe Edward is back in 3 weeks. That's best case scenario, likely a little bit longer than that. And then Cueto, they confirmed that Cueto is making another rehab assignment start with Jacksonville on Monday. Monday? Yeah, Monday. They usually don't play on Mondays, but because of the July 4th holiday scheduling, there actually is a minor league game on Monday. I was in the back of my mind, I thought maybe after the last outing that would be it. They would cut the cord, but they do have a 30-day window to evaluate him on a rehab assignment, and he still has another 11 days left in that rehab window. So he has time to make 2 more starts, and that seems to be exactly what they're going to do. Is they're going to play it out and then make a decision of when they have to with Cueto once he exhausts that window. It has looked so bad. I cannot overstate how washed Cueto has looked in every single game that he's pitched going back to the spring. Despite what he did the year before, there's no reason to think that he would be an adequate fill-in for any length of time in this rotation or in any role. In fact, as underwhelmed as we are with these other AAA options, I would think that if they do slow down Perez for in the near-term future before Eddie is back, I would advocate for any of those other guys from AAA to come on up. Even Devin Smeltzer again, even Chichi Gonzalez for a start or so. Maybe Emmanuel De Jesus. All those guys, I think they're by default, they're better than Cueto because you can't be more non-competitive than Cueto has been, who has an ERA of 11 something during his rehab assignment, and he is a fielder independent pitching that's also in the 11s. That is so hard to do, but it's because he's serving up meatball after meatball after meatball to minor leaguers. Yeah, they're in a tough spot if they do want to slow down Perez right here. But it is good news on Eddie that he is progressing and that it seems like he will be back before the deadline at some point.
Yeah, I mean, like you just mentioned, the fall off is so far, man. The fall off is so. I mean, yes, there's going to be fall off because Perez is so special, but the fall off here is so far to any of those names. Cueto being the farthest fall off, but even like those other guys that you mentioned, these are guys with ERAs in the upper 4s and 5s, like Gonzalez and all these other guys that you just mentioned, De Jesus, like all these other guys that you just mentioned. Like the fall off there is so drastic that it's very hard to be able to defend that, especially for a team that is doing as well as they are. So I agree with Danny. You got to get this guy off of this innings limit eventually. I get that you want to protect the player. I get that it's about health and protection, but it's not like this guy goes out there and looks like he's fatigued. He doesn't even break a sweat for the most part when you see him pitch. He's pitching free and easy. He looks great. This is I think this is an advantageous time to just say we're going to let the guy go. He's been our most valuable asset. Let's let it ride, man. And I think they would be happy with that solution. But according to Craig, apparently it doesn't look like they're going to do that. And who knows where Rogers is? Eddie's going to be a while. Eater's still going to be a while. So there's really, unless you go to Monteverde, I don't think there's any way that you can fully excuse the fact that you're shutting down your best pitcher. And then even if Monteverde comes up, who knows what you're going to get? He's been great in AA, but they have situations going on there with tack ball and all these other things. I think he would be okay. But yeah, man, the likely candidates that you would look at, as Eli just mentioned, are just such a drastic fall off. It's a very hard thing to consider from the standpoint of what Perez is doing right now and where they would be without him.
Yeah, just quickly on Daniel Castano here. I think he's in Jacksonville, but he still needs to get stretched out as a starter again. At last glance, I think he still hasn't gone multiple innings since coming back from the IL. So yeah, he could be an option in a few weeks from now. They just have this little void in the near term, unless if they do shut down Perez, there's just nowhere clear for them to go until one of these other guys gets healthy and stretched out.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about this first game, the lineups that have been sent out. And if you did see on Twitter, it is a lot of red on the Braves. Even you're watching a Marlins series preview, these Braves are scary. It is it is an all-star at every order of the lineup. Acuna an all-star. Albies is going to be an all-star. Riley, Matt Olson, Sean Murphy, Ozuna was an all-star. Was Eddie Rosario ever one? If not, he went off in the World Series and NLCS and whatnot. Arcia starting and Michael Harris, the second after having a start to his season, I believe getting injured, has come back to an all-star level, and what we saw last season with him winning or getting close to Rookie of the Year. I believe he did win. I'm not sure. I forgot that escaped me. But what do you guys see here? There's a lot of red. Is there any of it that really stands out to you? Something you looked at or maybe you weren't aware of before this came out?
I was aware of this. I don't know how many other people are aware of this with Ozuna and how much he was struggling when these teams met earlier in the year. And now look at him. Now he's on pace for 30 plus home runs again, even though he doesn't even play every single day. He's completely turned it on. He's gone back to kind of being the player that he was since the Marlins traded him away, where he's just another really good bat to add to this lineup. And he's our sixth hitter. Like on the Marlins, he would be their third best power. He would be higher up against the Marlins. With these other ones, I'm familiar with them, but it just reinforces how not only great solutions here, but some of the best players at their respective positions at so many different spots, including at catcher with Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy was, I think a lot of people had him circled as somebody whose results would improve this year compared to last year, but not to this extent. For him to catch and be one of the elite hitters in all of baseball, regardless of positions. And now he is under contract for 1 million years, just like so many of these other players are. It's really agonizing for any team that has to go up against them. With Acuna, you can't say enough about how good he's been. Although it feels like Arise is getting plenty of attention for flirting with 400, Acuna is the better player, and he is he's almost a perfect player this year. The only thing that rates kind of negatively is his defense, but offensively, he's just been unbelievable. He is on pace to put up the combination of power and base running that we probably haven't seen before in the majors. Near the league, leading the league in both of those categories, home runs and steals. And I mean, finally, I'll just touch on the one guy here that's on my fantasy team, Austin Riley. He's the one that's actually had somewhat of a down year by his standards. He's the one that has actually the biggest contract of all these players. And thus far, he's been, he's fine. Did he actually win the All-Star starting spot at third base, or did he just miss? Riley at third.
Yeah, that was Arenado.
Arenado beat him out.
Sean Murphy got shot. Sean Murphy and Acuna, I believe, got the starting nods for the Braves. I think. I'm not sure. I think I'm missing someone else.
Yeah, I'll just say that Riley's kind of hitting in third in this lineup out of respect and out of routine. And if something's not broke, don't fix it. But he's actually one of the weaker. He's one of the weaker. Riley is one of the weaker links in this lineup, surprisingly, despite what he's done the last few years.
Yeah, I think we could even talk a little bit. Just mentioning there, Arcia getting a spot in the All-Star game. What have you seen from him? Because he's almost, you could say, come out of nowhere. I mean, I'll admit I didn't really know much about him coming into the season, and now he's starting the All-Star game and just really been that really great defensive player who can also help you offensively. What have you seen from Arcia? And do you think he will be a factor or maybe an underrated factor in the series?
He has had a great story. He said a fascinating story because he was widely hyped up as a great prospect with the Brewers a handful of years ago. He never quite hit with them the way that they thought he would. And he was kind of in the wilderness the last few years between leaving the Brewers and then even when he originally came to the Braves, he was up in the majors, but not doing anything special. And Alex Anthopoulos strikes again at the perfect time with the contract extension right before he sells in their everyday guy. It was a surprise that he entered this year as their primary shortstop. He got hurt after getting off to a hot start, and I think everybody assumed once he came back from the injury, he'd come back down to earth. Nope. He is one of the better hitting shortstops in baseball this year, surprisingly. And he doesn't have like super flashy offensive tools, and yet it's just another position where they're in really good shape. He's, as we talked about Wendell, performing really well for the Marlins as their shortstop, but you'd have to say Arcia is a slightly better version of that, both offensively and defensively. So it's the deepest lineup in baseball, quite obviously. I would just finally touch on the 9 spot with Michael Harris II, because he got off to a very slow start this year, and people were wondering, is this a sophomore slump?
Nope.
He came back from an injury, and now he has been as hot as anybody on their entire team during the month of June. Once again, he's in the 9 spot, kind of just out of tradition, just because that's where he's been, just as a force of habit. But he is far more dangerous than any other 9 hitter in baseball.
Yeah,
it's a crazy team. Yeah, and they don't get lucky either. Like their team BABIP is 303, which is right around a neutralized BABIP, right? So it's crazy. Like their hard hit rate is the best in the National League and only second to the Rangers. They hit everything hard. They don't walk a lot, but when you're hitting the ball as hard as they are, it doesn't really matter because you're getting guys on base the old-fashioned way. So, yeah, I mean, this team is ridiculous. To see the reigning Rookie of the Year hitting 9th is ridiculous. Like, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, Sean Murphy, as Eli was talking about, as a catcher, Wright State University alum, by the way, crazy to see all the red in his column when he is literally the everyday catcher for this team. Acuna is just special. Albies, as you mentioned, Danny, Riley, like they're just name after name after name. So it's a very, very, very scary situation to go into.
And then you look also there, not on it. Travis Denard is another guy who I believe is off the bench right now, and just another guy that has really been lights out for the Braves too as of late. So they can even go in their bench, and even then you have Kevin Pillar, whose OPS is just under 800. It's just a really deep team, a really good team, a team that's going to be hard to beat for the Marlins. But I also want to get into maybe the Marlins lineup and what Marlins fans and what even Braves fans should look at towards where the Marlins. And obviously it is the complete opposite of the Braves in terms of red. There is no red at all in here. It's a lot of green, not qualified yet, a lot of blue. And the red is seemingly on just 2 players with Luis Arraez and Jorge Soler. But Jazz comes back. Jazz loves playing the Braves. He's friends with a lot of guys there. So he maybe wants to show out, really do his best there. But what are you guys looking at in this Marlins lineup now where Coop is back and Wendell has been heating up and you have Jesus in the 8th hole?
The only other thing I would say real quick, Danny, sorry, Eli, on the Braves, just really quick so it doesn't get forgotten, and maybe a plan of attack for the Marlins pitchers in this series. It's not a team that strikes out a lot, but I think what you're going to want to go for is limiting the hard contact, as I just said before. The Braves are the second worst team in baseball at hitting to the opposite field. They're a very, very pull-heavy team. So as a plan of attack for your Miami Marlins in this series, I want to see a lot of backdoor pitches, man. I want to see a lot of stuff on the outside corner. I want to see good command. And I want to see swings and misses and whiffs outside of the zone. That's what you want to see. So we'll see how the Marlins do with their command. But I really think for the catchers in this series, for the Marlins, Stallings, and if we see Fortes, it should be the plan of attack here for this team should be outside corners.
Yeah. To me, this is just a huge series for Jorge Soler. Very quietly, he's been, I guess you could call it slumping over the last few weeks. He's been stuck on 21 homers for a while. He's just coming off a rare hat trick from him yesterday as well. One of the nice surprises this year is he was striking out less this year than he had in previous years. And then he has a game like last night. So he was one of the few guys against Brian Bayo who wasn't really putting together even competitive at-bats compared to everybody else. With him, over the course of this last week and a half, the last 9 games, he's hitting 121 with a 323 OPS, 4 double plays as well. That's right. He had another double play during this Red Sox series. He continues to bat near the top of the lineup as he should. He still works a lot of deep counts. When he was against the Braves in Atlanta last year, he had a very big series as well. And historically, he's hit very well at Truist Park. So he'll be a big difference in this series. If they are going to win the series, they're going to need Soler to step up. If he wants to solidify his case as an all-star reserve, he needs to break out of this slump just a little bit. over the next week or so to earn that spot. If he wants to tune up for the home run derby, we're still in the air as to whether or not he's going to formally do it or not. In order to, he's probably been invited already, but to get some nice practice in during a game, that would be greatly appreciated with him. I have a lot of focus on Soler, knowing that how good a year that he has had to this point. Can he sustain it the rest of the year? That's going to be huge for this Marlins team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now go ahead. The game's in 20 minutes, right? It's not a 10 start. Okay. Perfect.
No, I was just going to say really quick. I was just going to say really quick on another topic. I agree on Soler, by the way. He's kind of gotten a little cold, but I have confidence that he can bring it back. I mean, the guy was tearing it up. So just a cold spell. I think he'll be okay. I would say for me tonight, as the bottom of this lineup looks pretty rough. Birdie, Sanchez, Stallings. Jesus Sanchez has gone cold again. And, he had that one really good month. I know he made that great catch at the wall, saved the game, which was awesome. But man, has this guy been pretty bad in the month of June. So it's difficult for him because when you see it and when he's doing it, it's awesome. But then when he goes cold, he goes really cold. And his month of June was not good. So yeah, and then you have Birdie, and he's not stealing bases. So if he's not stealing bases, he provides a glove. That's what he is. I mean, doesn't hit the ball hard particularly. Can get on base at times, but he doesn't do anything with it. He doesn't if he's not stealing, which that's another conversation. But the Marlins aren't stealing that much, as we know. That's kind of it becomes more of a hole in the lineup, right? And then Stallings, I don't have to say anything on that. So yeah, the 7, 8, and 9 here is worrisome. And I would really say that it's going to come to a point. I would say that the time is coming with guys like Dane Myers performing and others in the minors. They're going to have to do something about Jesus Sanchez. I don't think there's any way you can defend, a good 12, 15 game stretch any longer because of how good his power is. There's more good than bad to Jesus Sanchez with his longevity. So, I think he's getting pushed out of the picture here.
Yeah. Really quickly before we go into predictions, I want to go ahead and talk about the bullpen, specifically the Braves, because I remember last time we were talking about them. Eli, you pointed out some guys that you really liked, including a former Marlin, Dylan Lee, and how great he's been. Sadly, recently, or I believe today, was moved to the 60-day IL. So he won't be facing the Marlins for quite a while there. But who else maybe stands out to you on this bullpen? Because it's a bullpen littered of just, former All-Stars, really names there, and guys who have been around. You have guys like Kirby Yates, Jesse Chavez, Nick Anderson, former Marlin there, Raisel Iglesias. How would you stack this bullpen against the Fish? Oh, you're muted.
Recently, which game was I watching? I was watching one of the Twins games this past series, and I looked up to see Kirby Yates' numbers, and he is kind of most of the way back to who he used to be. This guy was, during his peak, he was one of the very best late inning relievers in baseball. Mm-hmm. And now he's pitching kind of low leverage innings, but he is very quietly getting a lot of results. And he wasn't really in the picture when these teams previously met earlier in the year. But finally, he's yet another important depth piece to this pen to make it even deeper beyond Iglesias and Nick Anderson and AJ Minter, who we're all familiar with. I remember Minter earlier this year. He was just, you don't want to simplify it this much, but he was just immensely unlucky early in the year. The Marlins had a big comeback against him, but there were other times that it didn't feel deserved and his ERA got bloated. And that was one of the concerns about this team early in the year was this bullpen. All of a sudden, not so much anymore. Jesse Chavez was having a surprisingly great year, and unfortunately, he got hurt. I saw that he got drilled in the shin on a comebacker and is on the IL, unfortunately for him. He was going really strong, despite being one of the oldest pitchers in baseball at this point. It's a really deep pen. The fact that, they've guys that it's just getting better as this year's gone along. It is, it's not, I don't think it's quite as good as the Marlins. I would say the Marlins bullpen over this one, all things considered. It is relatively close, though.
Yeah. Just really great there with their bullpen. If anything wants to add, I think Eli is a perfect time for us to go into predictions.
Okay, just give me a moment.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
So for those of you who may be new, for prediction time here, we like to give our series predictions for any series. One we are previewing for the Marlins. In this case, it is against the Atlanta Braves. So your prediction could be either team wins, could be a Marlins sweep, 2-1, and your MVP can be from either team, a hitter or pitcher. And we're looking some from our super subscribers and some of their selections. A lot of junior here. Either Jazz Chisholm Jr. or Ronald Acuna Jr. here. A lot of them have the Braves winning, which might be one that you might see a lot here with some FOF guys. But just to look out, maybe some odd ones. We have David K. Tobin going with Joey Wendell. We have a Brian Hoeing one, which is Alex Carver in disguise. And we have Eric Bolanos, who has Jorge Soler heating up and winning series MVP. But I think it's time for us.
Let me cut in really quickly with a quick plug. As you mentioned, these are our super subscribers, and you can get involved with this by becoming a super subscriber for as little as $3 a month. You just go on fishonfirst.com. The next series, not to look ahead to the next series already, but we are going to do a ticket giveaway for the 4th of July. Pick 2 pairs of tickets, selecting 2 different winners among our super subscribers to win those tickets. I'm going to be giving away those tickets tomorrow on Saturday. So you got to sign up between now and then if you want a chance to win them and to claim them for the 4th of July against the Cardinals. Everybody that's already signed up, they're going to have their chance to win. They'll get that notification from me tomorrow. Anybody else, your support is greatly appreciated, and it allows you to participate in these occasional giveaways, and of course in prediction time. For every single series we do these prediction times. Our leaderboard is even though we're deep into the year, there is a lot of movements going on, and there is atop the leaderboard, it is wide open. We have a tie at the top, and as badly as I'm doing this year, I'm still within 5 points of the lead as well. A lot of time left for people to come back to get involved, and it's people that do this, they are every single series. It's addictive to get involved in these prediction times. If you get started, you're going to love it. It's just one of the many perks of supporting us as a super subscriber.
Yeah. As we're starting here, I think we're going to start Eli. You get the music queued up. You're going to go lead off tonight.
I am delighted once again to pick against the Marlins once again. They have defied my expectations for so much of this year. And once again, although I believe that they are a better team than they were not that long ago, even earlier this season, they're facing as tough a competition as they could. I have the Braves winning 2 out of 3 with my series MVP going to Ozzie Albies.
Ooh. All right. Myself. I'm going to almost agree. It's seemingly with Eli. I think the Braves are out class the Marlins. I think the Braves have easily the best lineup in baseball. Almost everyone there is an all-star. And I think they're going to be too much for the Marlins. I think the Braves take it 2-1, and my MVP is going to be Austin Riley. I think he's going to have a great series versus Fish. And up next, last and certainly not least, Brian Hoeing Carver.
Yeah, I wish I could agree with the Hoeing pick. I do like that pick, so you will never hear me disagree with that. But I will also agree with you guys here and say that this Braves team is just so good. And it's going to be difficult for the Marlins with what we saw with lineups to, I think, score enough runs to keep up with them. So I will go with the Braves getting 2 out of 3, and I'll go with series MVP, the guy with an over 300 ISO to hit a couple home runs maybe in this series, Matt Olson.
Oh, yeah, a guy we have not talked about much this stream, but another great piece there for the Braves. Watch this series. This is going to be a fun series. Either if you're a Braves fan, you're a Marlins fan, or just in general a baseball fan, this is definitely the one to watch. Some great pitching matchups. You're going to get Sandy, Spencer Strider, Yuri Perez, and you should get a fun one tonight. As we're here with Bill Gates, our biggest fan, either in the Brave side, Marlins side, we do appreciate everyone coming on. It will be a tough one for the Fish. But again, I'm your host. We have Eli, Alex Carver. This has been FOF Live presented by La Pop, and always go Fish.